A pleasant morning to everyone. My name is John Pinder and I am from the parish of Christ the King, New Providence. Welcome to the Anglican Diocese's morning devotions for Tuesday, October 22nd, 2022. Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting God, whose will it is to restore all things in your well-beloved Son, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, mercifully grant that the peoples of the earth, divided and enslaved by sin, may be freed and brought together under his most gracious rule, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. A reading from the Word of God, written in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 27 through 29. The Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and only a few of you will survive among the nations to which the Lord will drive you. Therefore you will worship man-made gods of wood and stone, which cannot see or hear or eat or smell. But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. The word of the Lord. But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. In our reading from the book of Deuteronomy, if you were to read the entire chapter, you will recount the history of the Israelites. And we all know that historically and in the Bible, the Israelites were a people that had a somewhat back and forth relationship with God. One minute they were a people of righteousness who lived as they ought to have lived, who were obedient and who worshiped the Lord their God and him alone. And then there were those moments when they had backslided and they did what they wanted to do, when they wanted to do it, how they wanted to do it, and God would send punishment. And of course, after the punishment, the people would turn to God with a penitential heart, and of course, God, being a God of love and forgiveness, would give them another chance. But one of the greatest sins of the Israelites was that they loved to turn to other gods. We recount how when Moses spent just a little bit too much time on the top of the mountain, that they melted down some gold and they made for themselves a graven image to replace God, because somehow they felt like God had forsaken them. They had an inclination to turn to these pagan gods. When we look at the Israelites, they had a tendency to complain to God. God, you brought us out here to die. God, you allowed these nations to have this, but we don't have it. God, you did this, and God, you didn't do that. And a lot of times they seemed like very ungrateful people. And when the Israelites found themselves in that position, they were often threatened with exile. If they weren't able to be content in the land that God had given them, if they weren't willing to worship God and God alone in the land that he delivered them to, then their punishment would have been exile. And that is where our story picks up, our reading from Deuteronomy. The Israelites once again find themselves on the bad side of God. And they see and they find and realize that things are not going the way that they expected things to go. Historically, the Israelites find themselves in a very low point in their journey as a nation. But despite how low their current journey or position might be, despite the fact that they may have turned to other gods, despite the fact that they may have been complaining and God is threatening them with exile, we see that God is still a God of mercy and a God of love. God says to them that even when you are at this sinful place in your life, even at this low place in your life, if you seek me out, you will find me. If you seek me with your heart and your soul. That term, but, it's interesting how in verse 29 it says, but if from there you seek the Lord your God. It introduced a phrase or a clause contrasting what had already been mentioned. And when you get a chance, you could read all of chapter 4. But if you look at verses 27 and 28, God is saying that I will scatter you among the peoples. Only a handful of you will survive. You will be worshiping these man-made gods of wood and stone, these gods that don't live because of the sinfulness of your life. But, in other words, it doesn't matter what you deserve. If you would seek the Lord your God, all of that which is past can be erased if you seek the Lord your God, despite the possibility that all of these things may happen because of your own doing. No matter whether or not they are about to happen, that same phrase, but if from there you seek the Lord your God, it completely eradicates everything that preceded it. Despite their sinful nature, despite their inclination to turn from God, despite their idolatry, God was saying that if you seek me, you will find me. My sisters and brothers, this is an encouraging message for us. Because I'm sure that if we live long enough, we will find that there are days and times and seasons when we fall short. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. If we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves. We find ourselves in a similar position, if not worse, than the Israelites, because sometimes we just make bad choices. Sometimes we don't live up to the standard that we ought to live up because we are people, and that is not making an excuse for us, but the reality is we are not perfect. And the enemy loves to use the fact that we are not perfect to throw it in our face because it makes us think that we can't turn to God. It makes us feel sometimes that maybe God isn't listening this time, or God is tired of us always coming back to him with the same penitential heart, the same sorrowfulness and the same sorriness. And sometimes we just don't even want to bother bringing up and praying to God the things that have driven us away from him, because we think that maybe we've just done it too much this time. But when we read this same statement, if from there you seek me, if from that low place, if from that place where you are constantly angry, if from that place of unforgiveness, if from that place where you are holding a grudge, if from that place where you fell down and you haven't quite gotten back up, if from that place where you stopped reading your Bible as often and going to church as often, if in that low place you seek the Lord your God, you will find him. Jeremiah 29:13 says, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. My family, we can never be too low that the grace of God cannot reach us. We can never sin so much that God is not willing to forgive us. We can never stray too far away from God, because if from that low place we seek him, we will find him. But the responsibility, it is on us to seek him. We have to make a conscious decision to say, devil, it doesn't matter what you try to throw in my face and remind me of who I used to be and tell me the mistakes that I made. I'm making a conscious choice to seek God for myself, to draw closer to him, to study his word so that I could hear him better, to seek him more through prayer so that my relationship with him can develop, to seek him more through worship, because the Bible tells us, do not forsake the assembling of the brethren. And in seeking him in these ways, you will find him. And you will find his grace. You will find his forgiveness. You will find his love. You will find his understanding. You will find a God that says it does not matter how far away you have strayed. It doesn't matter how the enemy tries to throw that in your face, because when you seek me in my word, seek me in prayer, seek me in worship, you will find me and you will be drawn back. You see, that's the beautiful thing about seeking out God, is that when we take that initiative, we are then drawn back to him. Psalm 34:15 reminds us that the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous and that his ears are attentive to their cries. So long as you seek God, you will find him. You will be drawn back to him, because God's ears are never closed to the cry of his children. God is never too far from the reach of his children. God is always listening. As we are children of the King, which I talked about yesterday, the King is sitting waiting for us to come back to him. Waiting for us to be armored up to withstand the attacks of the enemy. Because that's what happens when we find him. We are drawn closer to him. We are hidden under the shadow of his wings. And we put on the whole armor of God so that we can see ourselves through these attacks of the enemy. You see, my family, the Muslims, they seek Allah. The Jews, they still await this Messiah who passed through the midst of them. The Buddhists, they still followed a deceased man. The Hindu gods have eyes, but they cannot see, and ears, but they cannot hear, noses, but they cannot smell, as Psalm 115 declares. But our God reigns. Our God is alive. Our God is waiting for us to seek him so that he can draw us close to him. Because we serve a living God. We serve a Christ that is resurrected. The song says, you ask me how I know he lives, and he lives within my heart. My family, when we put on the armor of God, when we arm ourselves through worship, prayer, and studying of his word, when we search him out, we will find him, because our God is within us. He will never leave us. He will never forsake us. He walks with us. He talks with us along life's narrow way. And when we seek him out, when we find him and he draws us closer to him, we are reminded to seek him with all our heart and all of our soul. It requires a total search, not lip service. Not trying to draw closer for the sake of family and friends and for showing off so people could look and say, oh, what a wonderful Christian this person is. But it is about a complete surrender, all to Jesus. I surrender all to him. I freely give. We search for God with our total selves. And this requires a conversion of heart and a conversion of soul. You cannot have an encounter with the living God and walk away the same. Because it requires a complete surrendering, and that which you surrendered is then replaced with the love, the mercy, and the grace of God. So that even when you may find that you sink low again, because you have surrendered something that has been replaced with God's grace and goodness and mercy, you are convicted to once again draw back to him. Because you know what it is to drink from that well that never runs dry. You know what it is to surrender all to Jesus. All to him you freely give. You know what it is to say, take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, for thee. You know what it is to say, oh, for a closer walk with God. And so it doesn't matter how many times you fall down, how low you get sometimes in your spiritual walk, because you remember the incidences and the times when God picked you up from those low places, because you know what it is to taste the goodness of God, to taste his grace, because all our lives he has been faithful. You then draw back to him and you seek him with a fullness of heart, a fullness of your soul, a fullness of yourselves. And you can face tomorrow. You can face the challenges that the day holds. Oh, blessed Jesus, he can hold our hands. And we can, in fact, face tomorrow. We can, in fact, face the challenges of another day. We can, in fact, continue to go on. Why? Because if we seek the Lord our God, we will find him. If we seek him with all our heart and with all our soul. Amen. Thank you for tuning in, and please share this devotion with as many persons as possible. God bless you and have a blessed day.
Consecrate me now to thy service.